Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Now it is time to introduce our main speaker for tonight, Doug.
I'm Doug, I'm an alcoholic. And I have absolutely no pitch, which is the truth. I have absolutely no idea what I'm going to say. I was earlier praying that God use me. And so let's hope he does a good job tonight. I want to thank Jeff for asking me to come here and talk to you. It's always a pleasure to be of service in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I know the cynics among you would say, "Oh yeah, right." Because I used to be one of you. And the truth is that I didn't have a life before I got here. I mean, from the outside, it looked like I did. But on the inside, I was dead. And Alcoholics Anonymous has given me the only life I know. God willing, and the creek don't rise, a month from today, I will be 24 years sober. That just means for 24 years, I haven't had a drink, I haven't had any drugs, and I haven't died. And yes, I did show up for all those days, but it was really God that did it. Because left to my own devices, I am a stoned, drunk lunatic. And I don't know how to, there is no governor. Set the controls for the heart of the sun. You know, that's really where it's at for me. I didn't walk into Alcoholics Anonymous of my own power. I was carried in to Alcoholics Anonymous, strapped to a table by mental health workers, which is the truth. I was involuntarily committed to a mental hospital. And in the mental hospital, I found Alcoholics Anonymous. How did I get to a mental hospital, you ask? If you drink and use drugs like I did, and you don't die, and you don't go to prison, you will go crazy. And that's what happened to me. You know, jails, institutions, or death. That's what they tell you. And I haven't died yet. I've been to jail, Beverly Hills Jail. Beverly Hills Jail didn't used to be a nice jail. I mean, this is back before they built that nice new jail. Any jail isn't good, I suppose, but I went to an institution because I got real crazy, and I didn't set out to be a drug addict. That wasn't my goal in life. Although all the heroes I had, or a lot of the heroes I had, were drug addicts and alcoholics, it's true. And I thought that they were very cool. You know, being cool is definitely part of my disease. But at a very early age, I realized that I didn't feel good. I didn't feel like my skin fit. I don't know if anybody here can relate to that. I didn't feel like my skin fit. I didn't feel comfortable in my skin. And anything was preferable. When I was a real little kid, I started building model airplanes and model army trucks and cars and things like that, and I discovered sniffing glue. And as I've said before, if this was Glue Sniffers Anonymous, I qualify. And I would sniff glue just because it felt different and preferable to the way that I normally felt. I would hold my breath until I passed out. We called it flashing. My parents were I grew up in Detroit, a suburb of Detroit, and my parents were very liberal. And if I wanted to, I could drink. And I'm told that when I was very, very, very young, my mother would make what she called wine coolers, and it was a bitter red wine, about that much red wine, and ginger ale. And the theory being that she would give it to me and my brother, and we would drink it and pass out, and then the adults could, go on with their partying. Well, of course, I would just keep coming back for more and more and more. And I would wind up performing for the party and getting more, and applause became part of the drug, attention. So I'm sure that I've been an alcoholic, or a budding alcoholic from the get-go. Alcoholism, as I've said before, doesn't run in my family. It gallops. And I have a great uncle who was found 4 days dead on the floor of his kitchen out in Glendora, clutching an empty bottle of vodka. That's where alcoholism takes you in my family. So I come by it naturally. I won't bore you with the details, of course. I grew up in the 60s, and getting high was what you did, and so I did, and I followed my dreams, and my dreams led me to California, of course, and I got very successful at what I do, and got all of the outside trappings, fame, wealth, all that stuff that I expected to fix me, because I knew I was broken. I knew that, I expected for it to help my skin fit, and it didn't. As a matter of fact, the more success I got, the worse it got, because it didn't fix it at all. And finally, I got committed to a mental hospital. And like I said, if you drink and you use, like I did, you'll wind up there if you don't die and you don't kill somebody and go to jail. So in the mental hospital, they took my belt and they took my shoes, my pink boots, actually. And they told me that they weren't. This was before they could hold you for, if a member of your family signed the papers, they could hold you indefinitely. So they told me that they weren't going to let me out until they had decided that they were going to let me out, and I didn't know when that might be. But I would stay up late at night talking with this woman who had voluntarily committed herself because she had been assaulted and was traumatized by that. And we would sit up late at night talking. And I was there in the mental hospital for about 3 weeks before she asked me one night, she said, are you an alcoholic? And I drew myself up as only a real alcoholic can and said, no. Do I look like an alcoholic? And she said, no, I don't mean anything by it. She said, the reason that I'm asking is because I'm an alcoholic, and I have 2 years sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I go to these meetings, and if you were an alcoholic, you could go with me because I get scared if I have to go alone. See, I knew it. I know now what she was doing then. She's trying to rope me in, play on my sympathies. And I said, well, I'd like to help you out, but I'm not an alcoholic. And she said, oh, no, that's fine. So if you stay in a mental hospital long enough, you will go crazy, and that's what happened to me. And I came to her and I said, look, can you get me out of here for even just a little bit of time? And she said, I might be able to. You want to go to a meeting? And I said, absolutely, sure, I'll go to a meeting. I'll do just get me out of here. How long are these meetings? She said, well, an hour and a half, it just depends. And so she took me to my first meeting. It wasn't a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, it was another anonymous program. But I heard this guy share from the podium, and he wasn't in my business, and he was a bit of a drugstore cowboy. He used to rob drugstores and take different drugs than I took. Although I was a garbage can, I pretty much took anything. If you had it and it got me high, I'd take it. He made prosthetic devices, but he told his story, and I was so crazy at the time. I thought that my then wife had gone to him and told him about me, and that he was just changing some of the aspects of the story. And I was convinced. I was terrified, and I was furious, and I was convinced that he was telling my story, because, as I now know, he was telling my story. He said that he, all his life, didn't feel like he fit in. He didn't feel like he was good enough, and he felt like he was better than everybody else. He felt like he had a hole in his gut, and that when he drank or used drugs, that hole closed up, and he felt whole. And that he did that for as long as it worked, until it didn't work anymore, and then he kept doing it. And that was my story. That was my story. And at the end of the meeting, everybody stood up and said the Lord's Prayer, and that totally freaked me out. Because I was raised by anti-religionists. They were people who really, they were rationalists, and they scoffed at people who had any kind of spiritual connection to anything. And I asked the lady who took me, my Eskimo, Pam, lovely Pam, who is still sober and just celebrated 26 years of sobriety. I asked her at the end of that meeting if she could take me to another meeting. And she said, there's another one tomorrow morning. And so she took me to one the next morning, and it was my first Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. And I heard another person share my story. And then I knew that my then wife couldn't have gotten to that person because there just wasn't enough time. and I got a big book, or what they called the big, I was looking for this big book, but there was this blue book called Alcoholics Anonymous, and I got it. And I read it in a few hours. And I've been sober ever since. And they did let me out of the mental hospital. And I found a life in Alcoholics Anonymous that I never even imagined existed. I found friends, real friends, friends who don't love me for any reason but for the fact that I'm present. They don't even care if I'm sober. They want to see me sober. They definitely do. And I haven't, thank God, had to drink or use since I got committed. But I found real friendship here, real fellowship. I got very involved in meetings. I got commitments because I was told that if I got a commitment, I would have to show up at the meeting that I got the commitment, and so I didn't want to fail. I actually, at the beginning, thought you people would throw me out if I wasn't good, and I didn't realize that you'd just love me all the more. And so I started going to a lot of meetings, and I got a lot of commitments, and for the first year of my sobriety, I worked the first half of the first step. I knew I was powerless over drugs and alcohol. I never had one drink or one drug in my life. Set the controls for the heart of the sun. That's me. But the rest of the steps, they were a little too scary. They were just a little too scary. And at about a year sober, I was starting to go crazy again. That's really the truth. That initial rush of sobriety had worn off, and the meetings, although I loved them and I loved the fellowship, they didn't make my skin feel like it fit. And so I had to find a sponsor who would take me through the steps, because I had heard about the steps a number of times since I'd been coming to Alcoholics Anonymous, like every meeting. But I hadn't really taken any of them. And I found a guy who I knew and seemed unthreatening. And he had a lot of knowledge about the steps, and he walked me through them. And I took them. And because I was able to take the steps, I got to stay here. And I can't tell you that I started feeling good right away. I didn't. It was really, really difficult. Being sober at the beginning, for me, was much worse than being high. It was much, much worse. It was so much scarier. I mean, I knew how to get high, even though getting high didn't work anymore. I knew how to get high. I didn't know how to stay sober, and I didn't know how to feel feelings, real feelings. I didn't know how to do it. And it took a while. It took a while. It wasn't overnight. I didn't have one of those spiritual awakenings like where the light shines on you and you start to sing, and it just wasn't like that. It was very slow. I heard from old timer when I was newly sober. This is $1 million program shoved up your ass a nickel at a time. And that's the way it was for me. It really was. You know, every day was just, you know, some days I just had to get through that day. You know, and when they say a day at a time, they mean a day at a time. Sometimes they mean an hour at a time and a minute at a time. But I was and I don't know why. I was willing to show up. I do know why now. I didn't know why at the time. What was happening for me was I was having a spiritual awakening. In the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, it says that the purpose of this book is so that you can find a power greater than yourself. That's the whole purpose of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, to find a power greater than yourself, because we cannot stay sober on our own power. We've tried, and it doesn't work. And that's what was happening for me, and it was happening very, very slowly. And the miracles that were happening and coming to me slowly were coming as a result of the daily application of the principles. And it doesn't sound, you know, dramatic. It doesn't sound sexy or funny or entertaining. Sometimes it's just hard work. Sometimes you don't want to do it. Sometimes you wake up in the morning and the only thing you can do is not drink, not use drugs. But the longer I stayed sober, the more I applied the principles of this program, the more I applied the steps of this program to my life. Taking an inventory, doing a 10th step, praying and meditating, passing it along, the 12th step, sponsoring people. What happened for me was, at the moment, I didn't know what was happening, but I got to be able to look back and go, wait a minute, something happened here. Something really amazing happened. I'm not the same guy I was when I came in. I guess I've had a spiritual awakening. I guess I've been changed. And one day I woke up and my skin felt like it fit. I felt comfortable in my skin, which is all I ever wanted to begin with. And nothing worked. Nothing on the outside worked. This is the only place I've ever been where what they told me when I first came here was the truth. Only place I've ever been. That where I went, I came here, they told me if I applied these 12 steps to my life, one, I would be able to stop drinking and stop using drugs where I never could before, and my life would change and I would become comfortable living in my skin. And that's exactly what happened. Now, I know that I'm not unique. I know that I'm just like you. There's no difference. Now, my circumstances, my story may be a little bit different. The drugs I use may be a little bit different. I don't make prosthetic devices. None of that matters. I have a disease which makes me bodily and mentally different from my fellows. When alcohol goes into my body or drugs go into my body, the phenomenon of craving starts. And I can't stop. And I don't know if anybody else in this room is like that, but that's me. And I've found in this room, in these rooms, through the agency of that book, a way in which to arrest that and to build a life that's worth living. Now, what more could you ask for? What more could you ask for? Now, like I said, when I got here, I had all the material things on the outside, and all that went away. It all went away. It's come back to the degree that I allowed it to, and I really wanted it to, and God wanted it to for me. But I also realized that the outside stuff is just the outside stuff. This is an inside job, and you will hear that over and over again in these rooms. This is an inside job. It happens from the inside out. I'll tell you a story, and then I'll stop. And I only mention this part of it because it's germane to the story. I am a musician. I was playing a show a year ago in Las Vegas. It was about 120 degrees outside. We were playing outside. Under the lights, it was probably 140. During the show, I started forgetting songs that any of you could sing. And it got weird. You know, I thought I was having heat stroke. But I started getting this dull headache after the show, and I went and did another show in Chicago, and I was doing things like tripping over my feet, and I was having trouble remembering lyrics to songs that I wrote, and how to play songs, how to play the guitar, which I've been doing since I was 11 years old. So I called up my sister, and I said, you know, I've been having this headache, and she said, well, you should probably go to the doctor, you know, it's what normal people do. I said, yeah, right, I got a brain tumor, right, you know. So the headache just wouldn't go away, so I called my doctor up, and he says, well, come on in. So I go in, and he shines a light in my eye, and he pulls out his cell phone, and he gets on it, and he says, get me Dr. Wu. And I say, Doc, why are you making a phone call? He says, well, I'm hoping that what I'm seeing is a blood clot, which didn't make me feel very good. As it turned out, I had not one, but 2 brain tumors. And a year ago, I think it was the 28th of July, they opened up the side of my head and they pulled a tumor out about that big. And since then, they've burnt 3 more tumors out. Now, I only mention this because you can get through anything sober. Anything. And something that would have terrified me just imagining it, I was able to walk through with an amount of calm, serenity, and grace that I marveled at. That wasn't me. Because the me that's me was running down the street with my arms over my head, shrieking. That's who I am. But no, I'm a guy who at that time was 22, going on 23 years sober, and I knew how to walk through good, bad, indifferent. it turns out there's not a lot of nerves in your head. So it really wasn't very painful. And I got to turn down all, not because I'm a tough guy or anything, turn down all pain medication, because they made me take it in the hospital. They gave me a big old honking shot of morphine. And I loved opiates, you know. Opiates were great. They really were. But I didn't even enjoy it, you know. I just didn't enjoy it. I like being sober. I like being sober. And that's not the me that's me, because the me that's me is an alcoholic dope fiend. I'm somebody who, you know, my favorite drug is what do you have? And my favorite number is more. The truth is you can get through anything sober. Good, bad, terrible, boring. I can't tell you that if you get sober and stay sober, your life will become a garden of earthly delights. That's not in my power to do. There have definitely been challenges, obviously, in my life. You know, the truth is that I then went through 11 months of chemotherapy, and I'd rather have brain surgery every day than chemotherapy. But in that same way, I did it a day at a time, sometimes an hour at a time, sometimes a minute at a time. I learned how to do it here. I applied the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous to my life, and they work. I guess that's my message. This program works. I was carried by a God of my own understanding this last year, who I learned about in rooms like these from people like you. I couldn't have done it without my friends in this program. I couldn't have done it alone. I couldn't get sober alone. I can't stay sober alone. I couldn't go through great things alone, and I can't go through terrible things alone. We don't do it alone, we do it together. Thank you for being here tonight for me.
Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. Shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.